What's up guys, welcome to another tutorial. Today project will be a very fun project. We will be creating a rolling dice by using the HTML, CSS and of course the JavaScript. So when we click this button, we have this effect of a rolling dice, which is actually an image, a GIF image, and then we get a different number of dice each time we shuffle, or we can get the same number. It's actually random. We can choose which number we want to display on the screen. This will be an excellent exercise if you are just starting with the JavaScript, and of course we will be using the main styles in the CSS, but mostly we will be focusing on the JavaScript, on the random function, the math function, and also how can we change the source of an image by using the ID of the image in the JavaScript. So like I said, this will be a very simple project. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get started. Alright guys, so before we start with the HTML, let's link our style. So link style.css, and also let's add the JavaScript with the script tag with the source of main.js. Now for the HTML, we will be starting with our main container. So we will be creating a div with the class of container. And here we have two elements. The first one will be the image. For the source, as you see, I named the dices with each dice with its own number, and this will be much easier for us to control and change it between dices. So we will be starting with the first one with the 1.png. Okay, and let's also add an ID for this image, and this will be img. And the second element will be a button. Now for the button, let's add a class, and this will be btn, and let's say this will be shuffle. Okay, so this is for our HTML. Now let's go to the style, and we want to remove any margin and padding first. So let's set the margin to 0, and also the padding will be 0. Now for the container, we want the width to be 100%, and we want the height to be 100 VH, which is the view height port. We want to display everything as a flex. For the flex directional, this will be a column. Also, we want to justify content in the center and also align items to the center. Let's save that. Okay, now for the image, and we use the hashtag here because it's an ID, not a class. So for the image itself, we will be changing the width and height and set that to 150 pixels. So for the height, this is also 150. Okay, now for the button, and the button is a class, so .btn, we want to also change the width to 150 pixels. And for the height, let's make it a little bit like a rectangle, so this will be 40. Okay, let's add some margin with 20 pixels, and also let's change the font size to 1.2 rem. Okay, let's also change the font family to something like the New Roman. The font weight, this will be 700. Let's change the background color. Let's make it like the dice itself. So this will be black. And for the color for the text, this will be white. Okay. And let's remove the border and set the border to none. And because it's a button and it's a clickable, so let's change the pointer. Sorry, the cursor. This will be a pointer. Okay, so when we hover it, we have this pointer icon on our when we point on it. Okay, so I guess this is it for the CSS. Now let's move on to the JavaScript. And for the JavaScript, we will be creating two functions. The first function will be the shuffle itself, which will change the dice number, and we will be using the random number function. and the other one will be an animation, and this animation will have this GIF image, which is just a dice rolling, and this will make our project looks cooler and it will be more professional, if you say that. So let's create a function and let's call this shuffle. Okay, now in this function, let's create a constant, which will be the image, and we will be using the document dot get element by ID img, and now let's have the random number and the random number is actually this is a function in JavaScript, which is the math.floor, and between the parentheses we will be adding the math.random because we want a random color. Sorry, we want a random number, and here we want to set the limits for the random number that we want to choose. Now, if we set that empty, that means that the random number will be between 0 and 1. So whatever number we will be getting from this 0 and 1, we want to multiply this by 6, and also we want to add it by 1. So if we have, let's say, 1 or 0, now we can multiply this number with the 6, and also we will be adding this to 1, and this will give us the range of numbers between 1 and 6. So this is our random number, and now let's use the image, and we want to set the attribute. And for setting the attribute, we want to change the source for the image itself. And now we want to add the random number that we just created, .png. All right, so far for now, if we use this shuffle function, we will be changing the number of the dice, and we will be changing the image of the dice. So let's test that. Let's save, and now let's click, and of course nothing is happening, and the reason for that is we didn't implement this function to our button. So we will be back into our index, and here we will be adding something called the onClick, and now we want to call the shuffle function. So let's save that and let's hit shuffle, and as you see now we have this number and we have the range of numbers between 1 and 6. Now let's add the animation, which, like I said, it's an optional function, but it will make your design and make your project looks more professional. So we will be adding a function, and let's call that anim for animation. Now we want to set a timeout. We want to call the shuffle function with 500. This will be the duration time, and we also want to redefine the image, and this will also be document dot get element by ID and the image itself. And finally, we want to also change the image with the set attribute, and this time I will be using also the source, but instead of using the random, we will be using this image, which will be this GIF image, which is rolling dice dot.gif. Okay, let's add our semicolon, let's save, and now let's back to our button, and instead of calling the shuffle function, we want to call the anim function. So now if I click, we have this cool animation of a rolling dice, and then we set on the dice which has this number between 1 and 6. So this was a very quick tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. This is the basics, actually, the basic exercises that you want to do if you want to start learning the JavaScript. So for the JavaScript, we usually you will be using this get element by ID function because you want to target an element according to its ID. This math function, the random function, is actually very useful. We did, I think, no, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't do this on the Dart on Flutter, but we will be doing that very soon. This random number is very useful function, which is, I think, in every language you can use it, and we also know now how to change the images according to the set attribute targeting the source, which is this right here, this attribute of the image, which is the source, and change the image according to whatever we want. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I shall see you in another tutorials.